Yo, what it do, what it do? It's your boy Yellow the Poet. And today I am here with Mr. Derick Johnson. He's a Army veteran. He's actually a life coach as well. Mr. Johnson also wears many hats. So today we're actually going to find out Mr. Johnson's story, and we're going to make this a very, very exciting interview today. Mr. Johnson, welcome to YTP Entertainment. It's a blessing to have you. Please enlighten us more about the things that you do.
I appreciate it. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. I'm always excited to have good quality conversations, meaningful
Yes.
conversations, and make people think. And hopefully they walk away with at least one or two things that they can implement in their life.
That is a blessing, most definitely.
Oh, yeah.
So this is awesome because I got a chance to speak with you briefly about some things that I noticed on your profile. And I noticed that you come from a mixed background. So do I. It's crazy that we have a few things in common. That's a great thing.
Oh, yeah.
Notice that you've overcome things by seeing things from both sides of the spectrum. That was another thing that I've also experienced as well. The only thing that I didn't experience was going into the military.
Okay. Gotcha.
But that is awesome. So please give us the backstory on how you were able to overcome so many things in your life.
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, so my father was African American. He was a farm boy. He grew up in Mississippi, and my mother's German. So grew up in Deutschland, grew up in Germany. So when my dad was stationed in Germany, that's actually where he met her. They actually met in the discotheque, so they called it back then. They were both actual dancers, like competitive dancers. So they met back there, and then they had my sisters, and then I'm the youngest. So long story short, I lived in Germany in elementary school and kindergarten. And so I was around a lot of mixed kids, military brats, and also just a lot of Germans, a lot of Turkish people, because there's a lot of Turkish people in Germany. So around tons of different cultures, and that was just normal. And in third grade, that's when we moved to the United States. So we moved to Pensacola, Florida. So it's in the panhandle of Florida. That's people are familiar with Roy Jones Jr., Justin Gatlin, Derek
Yeah.
Brooks, like all those gentlemen, they're from Pensacola. So panhandle area of Florida. I call it Floribama. We live like 20 minutes from Alabama. So still a beautiful area. But with that being said, moving from Germany around a lot of military families and different cultures, moved to the South. And I was excited and I was like, hey, we're going to move to America. And I was thinking about like how the schools are going to be. We got cheerleaders, we got sports teams, we got bands. And once I got there, I was like, oh, this is just like the movie because I didn't know what to expect. So I was like, oh, I got a locker room. So I was like, well, I'm literally living a movie that I grew up watching. So it's pretty interesting, like the mentality behind it. But then from there, I quickly realized that not all Americans are that open-minded. So being the mixed kid, I was in the honors classes and I was just educated because my mother was a kindergarten teacher for 40 plus years, and then my father was US Army. So the education, the structure, the discipline, all of that was always in the household. So I was just that hardworking kid. And then showing up, I love sports and I was just excited to try out for the sports teams and all that. But I quickly realized that I had to prove myself to my own people. Because as you know, when you're light skinned, you're automatically soft. You're automatically you're automatically something. Like they have these preconceived notions about you. So yeah, so with that being said, I was bullied a lot in school because I was a skinny kid. I was very shy. I was timid. I had a really bad stuttering problem. I was doing that all the time, and it was like extreme. So there was a lot weighing on me as that kid. And then at home, at the age of 11 and 12, my parents started to drink a lot more. So I noticed that it only happened at night. So it never affected their career. It never affected their daytime. It never affected anything else. It was only behind closed doors. So after the cookout, after the get together, after a long work day, they would come home. So between 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., that's when they would just release. So physical, emotional, just all the stuff. And at first it was shocking because I was like, all right, I'm not a bad kid. This has nothing to do with me. But then after a year of that happening, I realized that they were looking through me, not at me. And what I mean by that, they would see somebody else or they would think of something and basically just black out because the next morning they'd say, "Hey, where do you want to go for breakfast?" And the first few times I was like, what do you mean? You just missed what happened for 4 hours? Like, I'm still cleaning up glass. Like, what are you talking about? And so dealing with that, I had to put my foot down because that was happening at home, and then bullying in school. And I said, I'm sick and tired of feeling this way. And I knew that step one was going to be to change my body and my self-confidence. So with those experiences, getting beat up at school, getting the stuff happen at home, thrown against like all the wild stuff, I just got sick and tired of that. And I knew that I was going to be on a path to destruction, to pick up a bottle, to go fight people. Like I was just going to turn into a violent person. And I knew I didn't want to be that. So fitness became my outlet and that became my passion. So I picked up every bodybuilding book, Arnold Schwarzenegger book, Bruce Lee, like all the information I would just absorb. So I got obsessed with that. So I got obsessed with the fitness. And then within 2 years, I was able to transform my body. And then my teachers, classmates, and coaches, they were all like, what just happened to you since the other summer? And I was like, man, I just got obsessed with this stuff. And then I started just being more calm and I stopped allowing family, friends, the general public, or anybody to really throw me off my game. So I was always that calm person after that. And then from there, at the age of 15, I became a personal trainer and I started training my classmates, my teachers, my parents' friends, people in our neighborhood, and all that. And then the older I got, leading into the military and into college, I knew that I wanted to help people on a deeper level than just fitness. And that, with life experiences, gave me the passion to want to get into life coaching. So taking that path of being able to heal myself, to stand up for myself, have have the confidence and the calmness not to respond and give people the reaction that they expect. And then I was like, I love this. What can I do to help people outside of just athletics or just outside of muscle and fat loss and all that? Like, I love it. It gives them the confidence. But what really got me into life coaching was seeing clients months or years later and they lost their results because we weren't working together anymore, the time duration, or they moved. And I felt like I let them down. So that's a deep level of what inspired me to get into life coaching because I felt like I did not give him or her the mental tools that they needed to get rid of the traumas, limiting beliefs, bad relationships with food, whatever thing that they were carrying with themselves into everything they were doing. I was like, that's what I need to help people get rid of. And then they can thrive, not just survive. So my tagline is I help people identify their patterns that are not serving them so they can thrive, not just survive. So, long story short, I healed myself, that inner child, and then was able to help train other people with just fitness at first. And then after a while in college and the military, working with different people, I was able to help people in different modalities to help them get rid of those traumas or anything else that was really holding them at their core, where they felt like they couldn't get to that next level because something was just there. So that's what I do now. And it all related back to my childhood of the parents to school, being the mixed kid and having to prove myself, having to fight the dude on the basketball court. So all of that, but basically you just connected.
Oh my goodness, man. I swear you take me back when you say your parents were the competitive dancers. I kid you not, that was me. I was always being competitive in dancing. I figured because I was the tall, skinny, shy type, I had to find some type of outlet that would break me out of being shy all the time. The thing that
Exactly.
really was my eighth grade teacher. RIP Mr. Donald Abernathy, because he broke me from my shyness in eighth grade. He had me to actually go on stage and recite a
Oh,
poem
wow.
in the classroom. And that was the most terrifying moment of my life. Never being on stage before and then having to be on stage to
Oh,
recite a
yeah.
poem I just wrote. So that was amazingly crazy. I got a standing ovation, by the way. So it's my first time ever experiencing a standing ovation. But at that time, the standing ovation actually meant nothing to me because I didn't understand what the heck was going on anyway.
Yeah.
But it was real, real crazy that that happened. And growing up in Chicago, I got the opportunity to experience some of the things that you were experiencing, as like the racial profiling, being light skinned, and the stereotypes that go along with that, being tall and skinny, and the stereotypes that go along with that. The racial profiling was one of the most daunting things that could have ever happened. I could have taken, as far as the bullying, I had a few people who attempted to bully me, but not realizing, yeah, this dude is gonna fight you back. I'm not gonna just let you do whatever you want
Yeah,
to do. It's not gonna
exactly.
happen. So when they finally realized that that wasn't gonna happen, then I ended up getting transferred constantly from one school to the other school, one school to the other school. So it was terrible constantly going from one school to the other and having to get to experience and know different people. And that right there, I had to experience different bullies who would have different techniques for bullying, and that was no fun. That was no
Oh yeah.
fun. But I've overcome everything. I use my poetry, my speaking voice, my abilities to fight and fight back. I use everything that I could possibly use to help
Good.
allow not to go crazy for all of the crazy things that was happening to me. My parents divorced when I was at the age of 5. And from 5 years old on up, I was raised by my grandparents. But it was funny because even with my grandmother on my mom's side and my great grandmother, they were the one who was mostly raising me from birth all the way up until I was 5 years old. Then at
Oh
the age
wow.
of, it was my dad's mom who raised me. So my parents really didn't have much to do with my life at all. It wasn't
Gotcha.
until I was 24 that they actually started to try to be a part of that.
Oh
So,
wow. Yeah, it's interesting the path that some family will do, and they're like being selfish, but sometimes it all makes sense in the end where we're like, hey, if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have turned into these men that we are now. So in the moment it
exactly.
sucks, but sometimes looking back at it, we're like, hey, thanks.
That is so true. That is so true. So tell us some of the profiling experiences that you've actually had.
Yeah, for sure. So it definitely started in middle school. That's where I was first in the States. And it started on the basketball court. So I wasn't picked. Nobody knew who I was. I was the new kid. So it made sense. I was like, I'm not expecting to be the first round draft pick. So I wasn't picked at first. And I was like, ah, not a big deal, whatever. And then from there, they would just say slick stuff. And I'd always like show up. And then I was like, all right, I know I'm going to have to just show them that I can play ball. And then from there, because I was good at basketball, they didn't like that. And then I was like, wait, you thought I wasn't going to be good, but I am good and competitive. So now you don't like it. You didn't like me before because you didn't pick me. Now you don't like me because I'm playing. And then from there, it just turned into something really, it went from competitive to like just the shoulder into the face and then the elbow and then the accident. And I was like, these are not accidents. So I started being aggressive and doing that back. And they're like, okay, this kid's not backing down. And then the other people that weren't playing ball that were just standing there, they would try to bully me. So I planned it in my head and I said, okay, the day that I have to stand up for myself and just punch this one kid, I have to do it in front of everyone, just one good time for them to see. And it wasn't that I really wanted to hurt the guy, but I was in martial arts since I was a kid. So I knew how to defend myself, but I just never like use it. Like real martial artists, as you know, like they don't walk around with a tap out shirt with the UFC shirt and like, oh, look at me. Like real martial artists, they don't really talk about it. They're just like calm, collective. And that's how I was as that kid. So I made sure to beat up the bully in the locker room in front of people. And I just hit him a couple times and I didn't want to hurt him, but he was basically on the ground. And I was like, all right, look, you see everybody in here? You've made us all feel like crap tons of times. I don't know what all you did to each of us, but and then I just basically just was like, hey, I don't know if you're 24 or 15, but and everybody was laughing. I did it on purpose. I just wanted him to feel embarrassed the way that he made us feel without like staying on top of him. One side of me wanted to release like all trauma, but I knew that I was just going to end up somewhere. So I didn't. And then after that, he never messed with me again. And all the kids that didn't even know who I was, they were like, thank you. and they would tell me their stories of what happened. And it was interesting how like I didn't realize how many people I was standing up for by doing that. And they're like, wow, you could have just kept going, but you stopped. And then he actually spoke to me weeks later and was like, hey man, thanks for not continuing, because I was scared that you were going to do more. And I was like, no, I was mainly to make an example of you, how you made an example of us, how we're all scared. And then from there, things started shifting with him. He was still bullying people, but not as extreme. But for me, it gave me my power back. But also, more so, I like the fact that it helped others, because I no longer was scared of the bullies, because I was like, my biggest bullies were my parents every single night. So I was like, I'm not scared of anyone. Like, my mom's been saying the wildest stuff all my life. I'm like, once your mom tells you, just to be transparent, once your mom tells you that she wishes she had an abortion a million times, there's really nothing worse that could happen that you're worried about. So, and it was only when she was drunk. Like the very next morning, she'd be making breakfast, like, hey, good morning. How are you doing today? I'm like, did you? Okay, you don't remember what happened last night. But basically, that was like the cheat code to not really letting bullies or the general public or even like racist situations in the South really affect me much. Like, yeah, it was a shock at first, but me personally, it didn't affect me. It more so affected me when people were bullying others, or if racism happened when people that I cared for or loved were around me. That's when it would really irritate me. So me on a one-on-one level, I could just agree with people, and I would give people the reaction they didn't expect. So they would expect me to be angry, cause a scene, fight, do whatever. I would just agree with people. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I am. And they're like, they wouldn't know what to say, because I was like, I'm not doing this back and forth. Like, this is a waste of energy. And I'm not going to get you riled up to cause a scene. Like, I was never one to cause a scene at all. So I just started agreeing with people, and it caught everybody off guard. So thinking back, I wish I could take pictures of their faces and just like have a yearbook of faces of when I disagree with people. But it always stood out of my head. But it was more
Oh,
so the reason I did all that was I got tired of people controlling me and my reaction. So I made a promise or a pact with myself and said, I'm no longer giving my parents, any other family member, or anybody in public the response that they expect. Easier said than done, but the more that I did it, it became like a cheat code skill of life where I was just always just calm. And I realized that it was like my gift. And I feel like every kid or teenager that goes through trauma has a gift. And I feel like mine was discernment. So being able to
mm,
read somebody where they're at, or a group of people, or read a situation and just really see it the way it is, but not let it affect you. And I feel like that's what it was, because when you're that kid, you're getting stuff thrown at you all the time and you're always hyper aware. So it made me good at sports, and it prepared me for the military. So I was like, hey, this is a win-win. So thanks.
I admire your self-control at such a young age, because it was a little bit different for me when I had the bullies come at me and they were attacking me. And yes, at first I was afraid to do anything. And you're right, the people who learn martial arts or learn any um, controlled style of fighting, they really don't wear a shirt or run around advertising that this is what they know. I grew up in boxing starting from the age of 7. I was in the Navy Pier at the back of the ring while my dad was on the basketball court. And nobody ever knew that I was actually boxing or being trained to be a boxer. Nobody knew anything about it. Um, at the same time, a year later, I was still doing boxing, but I was also learning Tai Chi. So I'm doing both, I'm learning both. And then I had some elders in the neighborhood that nobody would mess with. They always respected them. But they told me, like, okay, we see that you're kind of into something. Like I can just tell. I don't know what you're into, but I can tell you
Yeah.
into something. And I'm just like, how you know, like what they say, well, that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few other things to add to what you already know. So I end up learning some karate moves as well as some kung fu moves, and nothing that would say that went from beginning to end. It was just a few techniques that they wanted to add to what I already knew. So
Yes.
I'm already knowing these things when I'm going through this whole process of bullying, but I just never use it. I was too afraid to even use it. So when I finally did start to use it, I was ready to really hurt these two guys that were constantly
Yeah.
bullying me at the same time. And they would always do a sneak attack. They would always catch me from behind. So when I finally got a chance to get them, I was paying attention to the eyes because we were outside playing football, and I noticed that every time they were coming, everybody they wouldn't say anything. They would just stand there and they would just look and had this type of look in their eyes, like, "Oh, something's about to happen." So
Yeah.
finally, I turned around and I saw them, and I started fighting them back. And I really wanted to hurt them badly because my temper was like, I kind of blacked out. So I really had no recollection of anything that actually happened. All I know is I got both of them down. I was ready to do more to them. They got up and they took off. And both of these guys were older than me and bigger than me.
Yeah.
So I admire the fact that you at least had some form of self control because I had none.
Well, I mean,
uh,
it's good that they ran away too. So sometimes those moments are just like blessings for the people that were the ones getting bullied. So it could get worse, but if they didn't run away, there's no telling what would have
yeah,
happened from there.
but I never seen them again. And the other students, I never knew that there were other students like you did. I never knew that there were other students that they were also doing the same things to. But after that day, they never came back. I never seen those two guys again.
Oh wow.
So like I did a justice not only for myself but also for the other students that they were bullying. And it wasn't until that day that other people actually came to me and told me like, man, these guys been coming around here for a long time, constantly doing stuff to children, kicking them, pushing them down, hitting them in their face, and they are much bigger than us. So I was
Yeah.
like, this is ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. But again, it was a blessing that at least they seen that someone will fight them back and they never showed up again. That was a blessing. So the other children didn't get bullied anymore either. I love that
Good.
part.
That's awesome. Oh yes. Sometimes we're doing more for others than we're doing just for ourselves in the moment. And it's always powerful to see that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's an extremely powerful moment for me. And I tell my children about that. I tell them I don't warrant the whole taking what you know and using it to really hurt someone badly. But I do warrant teaching somebody a lesson and having that lesson to move forward as a positive experience, not so much as a negative experience. Because you don't want to traumatize anybody just because something happened to you. You don't want to put someone in a really, really bad situation just because you're angry. No, let it go. You taught them a lesson, let it go, and let's just hope that they don't continue to try and do the same thing again.
Exactly. 100%.
So tell me if you've ever experienced something like this. Okay, I grew up in Chicago. So if you've ever seen Comiskey Park, in
Yes.
Comiskey Park there, okay, so before they built that new extension to it, I used to live on that land before they built that new extension. And there was houses full of like blacks, and we had a couple of other mixed people that lived in the neighborhood as well. Excuse me. And then further down, we also had the projects, which was called the Wentworth Gardens. So on the other side, and the pavement on our side, we had the asphalt, which was black. On the other side, they had the concrete, which was white, and there was also white people that lived on that other side. Those white people would come over to our side and try and bully us, try and take our new things like new bikes, new skateboards, new stuff that we got. They will always try to take our stuff from us, not realizing that we were not born in the 1920s or the 19
Yeah.
the early 90s. We weren't born in those time frames where people were too afraid to fight you back. We fought them back. And nine
Oh
out of
yeah.
10, there was rarely ever a time where we actually lost a fight. And if we did lose, it was because we were outnumbered. It wasn't because of a one-on-one.
Oh
So
yeah.
they would try and do that. They tried to do that to me one time. I had just got this brand new bike, and me and my cousin were preparing to do bike tricks in the Bud Billiken Parade. So we had a lot of fun. We was out there playing and messing around on our bikes, doing our little tricks, and then here come a group of white boys coming over, trying to take our bikes away from us, not realizing that we were actually in a bike group. So in our bike group, there was 100 members. We had set up a date and a time that we were going to meet over there. Less than 2 3 minutes later, our friends were already coming and saw them. We didn't see our friends, they didn't see our friends, but they had surrounded them, and we ended up making sure that they didn't take our bikes, gave them a few hits and let them go. We didn't actually try to like brutally beat them or anything. We just hit
Yeah.
them a few and let them go. But those two guys went back and got some other people.
Oh
So
yeah.
it ended up bigger brawl than anything. And then some of the elders even had to get involved. So it was crazy, but nobody got arrested and no one got severely hurt. It was just a lesson taught that no, you're not going to come over here and try to take our things away from us. And no, you're not going to try to treat us as if we're slaves. It's not going to happen. We will fight you
Exactly.
back.
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. So I honestly, as a teenager, middle school and high school, most of the bullying honestly happened from our own people, so African Americans. So the reason why, like at first, it was in middle school, then I got to know the guys, and not like we all became friends, but they knew me. Then in high school, what happened at this time, I was in high school during Hurricane Katrina. So Pensacola is a 2 to 2.5 hour drive from New Orleans. So after Katrina, people either went north or they went east. So east of New Orleans is Pensacola, Mobile, Alabama, the Panhandle. So a lot of people came from there. So then at that point, people came over, and a lot of them were either gang affiliated or like it is what it is. They had to leave and go to better places. And they came to my high school. So my high school was like half country, redneck, or it was like half hood. Like there was really no in between. Then you had the occasional couple mixed people from military families because Pensacola is a military town, but there's so many schools that they could have went anywhere else. But in my high school, they came there. And at that time, once people from New Orleans came, then there was like the black versus white thing. And there really wasn't an issue in my high school until they all came from New Orleans. And because I'm mixed, they're like, my redneck friends were like, Derek, you gonna come over here, brother? And I was like, nah, Bubba. I was like, I'm just gonna be in the middle. I was like, I could care less. And because I didn't choose a side, they started trying to jump me. Like the black people started trying to jump me. Only the ones that didn't know me that came from New Orleans, because they're like, oh, he's controlled opposition or whatever they called it at the time. I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. And so yeah, I had to like fight a couple of them, and then they realized like, oh wow, he's actually trained. And then from there, things started dying down after a while. But I was like, there was about 2 week period where it was black versus white, and it
Mhm.
didn't exist before that 2 week period in regards to like fighting. Like racism will always be in the South, but at least my area, there was no violence. It was just more so like slick stuff or little pranks and stuff like that, or slick comments. But all those things really didn't bother me. But once that happened after Hurricane Katrina, that's when I was like, this is the stupidest stuff, because it's just the closed mentality. They're just doing what their ancestors did. They're doing what their ancestors did. Meanwhile, I'm here in the middle. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to let them beat me up. And these people already know me, so they have no reason to fight me. So it was an interesting time period. But yeah, after that, I honestly didn't have any violence from racism. There was just some weird moments because predominantly my relationships, just like right now, I have mixed relationships. So the only time that I'd really have racist moments that would bother me is when I'd be on a date, or if my girlfriend and I would be traveling and her family would meet us somewhere, wherever we were in the States. It was still in the South. Like she's from North Carolina, I'm from Florida. So we would meet somewhere in Georgia or wherever. And then we'd meet her family, we'd go out to eat. And that'd be the only time that I would have issues. It's like personally to this day, it doesn't bother me at all. Racism, people can say whatever. As long as you don't touch me, I could care less. I don't give people a response. But it's when the people that I love are around and we're just trying to have a meal in a nice restaurant and they're snickering, and I don't cause a scene, but I usually just like, it's Like what year is it now? We can't just have a dinner.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just crazy because it's like the country dudes are annoyed that the white girls with the black guy or the mixed guy, and like what is he? Is he Puerto Rican? Is he Mexican? Is he what? Is he black? Like, and it's like the stupidest stuff. And then on the flip side, the black girls would be like, "Oh, are you colorblind, Derek?" and blah blah. I was like, "Oh my God, can I just be myself?" So there was a lot of that. There was after teenage years, it was no more violence. It was just more so of the stereotypes of the people annoyed. But nowadays, we'd less likely have it at all. But it was just interesting at first, the first few years. But that's definitely what I experienced after Hurricane Katrina, couple fights and all that. But then at long term, it was just like traveling, just the occasional things, holding my tongue. And then when it came to people around me, whether it was my friend's girlfriend or her family, that's when I would have to speak up. But I always made sure there was no violence or no scene caused, because a lot of people, they only do it to try to get you all riled up, to say, see, I told you so. That's how they act. Or I told you that's how she, like, that's all it is. And when you can see that, you just play chess with your words. And
Yes.
that's what I just started doing, that, and just make people feel dumb without really doing much.
My background, I majored 4 years in psychology, also a business major. I have my bachelor's degree in business. But when people say something crazy to me, I usually use my psychology against them. But in a normal world, normal setting, I actually pretty much don't even think about psychology at that point. I just think about common sense. You know,
Oh yeah.
anytime people are saying things or actually pretending as if they're joking, and you can pretty much tell if someone's joking or not, then that's when I actually come out with it. It's, other than that, no, I won't say anything. I just let them talk because, again, just like you, as long as you're not putting your hands on me, you can say whatever you want to say. Your words don't bother me, but I will have some words for you that'll make you think like, okay, did you really just say that? And not
Yeah.
even use a curse word, or didn't say anything out of the way to make anyone else understand what you were saying, but you made me understand exactly what you were saying. Yes, I did.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
and
I will.
people don't realize how much power you could have just by staying calm. It's like simple in-person eye contact. If you don't break the eye contact without even trying to intimidate them, they're just like, oh, he or she is not scared, or they're not fazed by this. And it's like small sub communications are so interesting to me. Like I always noticed that. And I never knew what any of that was in middle school, but because of all the stuff happening at home, I was always hyper aware of reading body language. The older I got, learning psychology and everything else, I was like, that's what that is. I used to do this, I used to do that, and it all made sense. And I was like, that's interesting, because kids and teens that have trauma, they get really good at reading people or situations.
Mm.
So, and then once they learn the science behind it, behind the brain, behind cognitive biases, all the stuff that people do, the reactions, why they do things, then it all makes sense. And in hindsight, you're like, huh. And you can like connect everything. You could literally read the person like a book. And it's always been interesting.
I had situations where I would be at home and I felt that I was bullied at home too, because after my grandmother took me out of my situation with my parents, then I was into situations with family members. And it was just crazy because even my own family members were, oh, look at the little white boy, because I was a lot lighter than what I am now. This is come
Yeah.
from a but look at the little white boy, look at this, look at that, just calling me all these crazy names. And I'm just looking like, we're supposed to be family and this is how you treat me? Like, are you serious? And ended up having to fight my own cousins, and it was just ridiculous, total ridiculousness. And it went on for years, years, years. And I'm just like, when will this end? So when I finally got a chance to get away and just not have to deal with any of it anymore, I took advantage of that opportunity.
Oh
And
yeah.
I look back. I never look back. Like right now, it's sad to say, but even after mending all of those broken moments and horrible instances that I've had, we I still hardly ever see anybody in my family. Still hardly ever. And
Yeah,
it's not that I don't love them. It's not that I don't care. It's just that when you go through something, you tend to create this distance, and that distance turns into your method of security to avoid anything further happening. And after doing it for so long, it becomes the second nature that this is what you're doing. It's no longer a habit. It becomes second nature that you're keeping your
exactly.
distance. And
100%. I totally relate to that as well, where I don't speak to most of my families on both sides because a similar thing happened to my father's from Mississippi, and nothing against the state of Mississippi, but just the mentality aspects is just very close on both, no matter what the culture is. It's like anybody that lives in a small town is going to have preconceived notions about people and very closed mentality, which makes sense why. But that was a big reason why I don't speak to a lot of that family. Is just in terms of energy level, it's just negativity. They just see things in a different way. Where I was like, I'm just wasting my energy trying to explain things to somebody that doesn't want to hear or be open to somebody else's perspective. So it's like it's a waste of time. And then also when it came to like draining, I like having quality conversations or just be excited about life, being around people that are passionate about what they do and life rather than did you hear about what this happened in the news or you hear about that and hear about that
yeah,
celebrity and this or you hear Uncle Joe just passed and this and then you remember that kid we went to school with, yeah, he's back in the I'm just like 99.9% of the stuff is negative or things that I can't even control, so I don't give any of that any attention. So just people like that in general, whether it's family or old friends, I just had to distance myself because I'm just not that kind of person to just talk about stuff or gossip. And I realize that most people that are in that zone, they're just projecting. And that is why they speak about people and situations so much is to like get outside of themselves because
yes,
reality, they're not happy with it. So they feel power in gossiping, speaking about this, pretending things don't matter, like all these different things that I could always feel as a kid. Like as a kid, I could just sense that these are not my
yeah,
people. And I relate to that. It's like I love them, their family, and all that. But at the end of the day, it's like if you don't bring nothing to the table or we can have a conversation, what are we doing? So
right.
nowadays, it's the same thing. Like I'm not close to any of them, and sometimes my message each other on Facebook, but it is what it is, and they know what it is too. They're just like, dang, he's always going, always doing this, and he's open, he travels and does all this stuff. And it's not that I'm better or worse than them or vice versa, but it's just the mentality is different. Where in their eyes, they see it as arrogance or know it all, but it's not. It's just like, no, you think that because you haven't seen much. Like, what do you expect when you're military? You travel to different countries and do all this. Like, the mentality is going to be different. So it brings life to people. I feel like the cheat code for I don't remember who said it, but I'm going to paraphrase the quote is traveling is the antidote for ignorance. Traveling is the antidote for ignorance. And it could literally be to another state that's totally opposite. Like if somebody's in the South and the Southeast, if they go out West or if they go up North, that could open their
Uh,
mind. If they go to another country, same thing in reverse. But I really realized that just growing up as a military brat, living on a military base, everybody's pretty open-minded, so nobody's worried about racism or anything because like the parents are traveling, people are mixed, we're all there for one reason. So it's like, why do we think that way? So when you have to backtrack and then you meet the family in your own family that is not that way, you're like, what is this? This is a culture shock. So it was really interesting.
yes, that is awesome. So my next question, we're going to kind of shift gears. I totally can relate to everything that you were just talking about. It's just so much going on in that realm of life, and a lot of people don't understand the different innuendos, the different jargon, the different things that are being said to you, against you, as well as the mindset that you have at that very moment. A lot of people understand that there's a lot more that goes along in that psychologically as well as physically that meets the eye. Just because you see me on the surface as I am right now, that doesn't mean that all the things that happened in my past are not at some point being relived or rethought of because of certain
Exactly.
things of those things. You see what I'm saying? So my next question, you talked about the military, and I was looking at your profile, and I'm loving the different things that you've actually done, being awarded the Soldier of the Year for your battalion 3 times. That is awesome. So tell me, what was it like to actually get to experience that? My daughter is actually in the army. My stepdaughter, she's in the army, and right now they got her overseas, and they had them on lockdown because of the war that was going on between
Yes.
um Putin and them. Yes.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So what was it like for you to receive these awards?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So I appreciate that. So with the awards, it all stemmed from honestly the child who's scared of everything. I knew deep down that I had to join the military to become the man that I knew I wanted to be. Because I was that scared, skinny kid, I had a fear of heights. So the military helped me overcome the fear of heights. I mean, I might still get nervous in a helicopter or something, but it's like you're still there, you're doing it. So flights and all that don't scare me. But as a kid, I was just scared of everything. So I knew I had to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. So with the military, I just always said yes to every school and to anything that was like a challenge because I knew that I needed it for the mental aspect, not just the physical aspect. So when it came to the Soldier of the Year, it's all up to the person if they want to actually pursue that. So what it consists of is one, the physical standpoint. So you have the regular PT test, and then you have other physical tests. Two is the mental standpoint. So once you're physically and mentally already drained, tired, and all that, you have to take written tests, and then you have to take verbal tests to make sure that you can still have that mental cognition to see if you remembered. And it's basically just a ton of stress that they put on you to see what you're capable of. And last but not least, number three, you go to the board, which means you knock on a door, you get called in, and then all the highest rank are at this like rectangle table. And you're sitting in the middle of the rectangle. Sometimes it's all the way around you, and you sit in the individual chair and they just drill you with questions. And so that part, the last part, was the easiest for me because I just was never nervous with people because I was just used to drama at home. So going back to my beginning of the career at basic training, whenever the drill sergeants were in my face, like 7 of them at once screaming, this guy says, run over here. The other guy says, no, don't listen to him, do this. All they're trying to do is play a mental game to get you overwhelmed. I almost laughed at basic training because in my head, I was like, my 5'4" German mom could take all of you out. Like, this is nothing. And I'm my dad's 6'3". I'm like, dude, they would destroy you guys. Like, this is a cakewalk. And so I didn't say it, but in my head, I was like, this is nothing. But in the moment, I was like, wow, that was like a training ground. My house was a training ground. It was beautiful from the outside, but behind closed doors, once everybody left, there was a lot of dark stuff that happened. But in the military, the physical and mental aspect was the easy part for me because I was used to it. So that being said, going back to the board is I enjoyed that because that's when I was calm and I would thrive and I would never break eye contact. If he asked me a question, I would just look at him, the next person, and they could just see my body language. Whatever they were trying to do just wasn't working. They're like, okay, this is interesting. And so internally, I was proud of myself. Externally, I was like, this is awesome because they can see that. So it didn't throw me off at all. So I just kept going. But basically, that's what the Soldier of the Year consists of: the physical, the mental, and then also like the communication drilling. And what I realized is that many people that try to do it, they crumble during the verbal part around the board because they're intimidated by the rank, by how many people it was, the questions they were trying to throw them off. That's when they would get nervous. Most were pretty good at the physical because that's part of the military. A lot of people were pretty good at the written test and the other verbal tests that you had to do. But when it came to the board, that's when many were not in their element. But I was in my element with the fitness and then also the board. The hardest part for me was the tests. I just always just hated studying. I was good at school, but I was just annoyed. I was like, this is pointless. But I did it. I just saw it as a challenge.
That's funny. Oh my goodness. Well, here's my military test. Although I've never been in the military, we had this project in college. You had to put all of these boxes inside of a room, and you had to make all of these boxes fit inside that room.
Yeah.
But It's the trick. The trick was you couldn't physically put them inside there first. You had to physically put them inside there after you mentally put them inside of there.
Okay, gotcha.
You mentally put them all inside this room and seeing how you were going to categorize them and make them all fit. And you only had about 3 minutes to mentally put all of those boxes. And it's about maybe 150 or 200 boxes that you had to put inside of one room. And there
Yeah,
was a way to fit because each one of them was like playing Tetris. You had to organize each one of them so that they would fit. And the fun part was for me was doing it mentally.
yeah,
It also it I didn't feel like it was a challenge because I was always one of those people who knew how to make things fit. And to this day, my children are still like, how do you make all this stuff fit? And I'm looking at it like there's no way this is gonna fit, but somehow dad makes it fit. And so it
exactly.
was that part wasn't a challenge for me. It was just a lot of I like mental games. I like mental challenges. I've always loved those things because I felt like a lot of stuff that I went through growing up was the mental challenge. And if I didn't take on that mental challenge and be able to overcome that mental challenge, then I felt like I would be a failure in life. And I'm not going to be a failure. I don't care what happens.
Exactly. Oh yeah. And that's the best part is it always prepares us for it. And in hindsight, we become so good at some of those things where we're like, wow, I didn't realize that I was getting a ton of skills. All that was a
Exactly.
training ground to make me better at what we do. So that's always the best part when you peel back the layers of somebody and just learn that. And in middle school, that's another thing. Outside of just fitness and learning mindset, I got obsessed with learning comeback stories. I would watch interviews of celebrities, of pro athletes. I would read autobiographies and biographies, and I would just love to learn the backstory. Even if I didn't like the person or was into whatever they're into, it all made sense because each of them all went through different types of trauma, whether it was family, whether it was personal and self-inflicted, whatever happened. But I loved the backstory because then it made sense why that person, male or female, was at the level that they were at. And so, like, I absorbed those stories because I would tell myself, I will have my own comeback story with what happened here, what happened there, what's going to happen in the future. It's inevitable, but I would always just tell
So,
myself, I'm like,
so
you're
which
part of your
one?
comeback.
which
Oh, not sure if you can hear me. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but the internet is a little glitchy. You froze.